if we're just relying on the agent and the user's prompts to create the experience, where do we fit into that process?
We don't have to keep solving problems anymore, and an agent will fix it.
Are you still using like a design system?
So yes, I am, but what if there's more to it?
Have you had experiences where you felt like your lack of knowledge in the engineering workspace was a disadvantage?
I
Hi, I'm Eli, and I help design vscode. And today I'm here with Thoa. She's a designer on Microsoft Foundry, and today we're going to talk about how designers can get a little bit closer to the engineering workflow, hopefully using tools like VS Code.
yeah, I'm really excited to have this conversation.
I think we're in a really interesting space, I would say, to have such a strong community of technical designers around us. But something that I've seen online and in conversations with people outside of Microsoft or our business unit is it's just so fast. Like something is changing every day. There's a new model coming out. There's a new term. There's a new skill. There's a new custom agent. There's a new harness. There's all these new vocab words that come out every day or every week. How are you keeping up?
Every day someone's like posting something new about this new AI tool that they use, and it's like, wow, should I be getting all this? Should I be using this tool? And coming from the perspective of like a new grad designer and knowing what other college students are kind of learning in academia right now, I think it's really easy to get carried away with these and feel very pressured to use them. But I think it's really important to take a step back and really evaluate these tools that are being used and deciding which one is the one that you're going to commit yourself to. And once you know what to use, start building with it. Do a design process, like a fake small project for fun that you want to do and create it, like do something with it so it's practical and you know how everything moves.
Right. Try the software.
Exactly.
Try the new feature. Are you using Copilot in VS Code or Cloud Code extension or Cloud Code harness in VS Code?
Yeah, so with being here, I'm using GitHub Copilot CLI
Okay.
in the terminal
And VS Code.
in VS Code. And there's also the chat panel
Mhm.
with the agents, and I like using Thoa
Okay.
in that experience.
And are you using plan mode?
Yeah, plan mode in VS Code is really nice when I have a more complex flow that I want to build out. And so usually before I go into like a very complex experience, I try to map it out visually first in like FigJam, and see like, okay, like where does the user start? Where do we expect him to end? And if I want to design something a little bit more granular and understand like, oh, how that should look, I'll go into Figma and like, okay, build that out based on the flow. And then once I have like a general idea of that experience, like once I have that mapped out after like, working with a PM or a researcher to confirm this is like a vision, I go onto plan mode in VS Code and say like, okay, here's my flow. Help me break this down step by step so I can implement it. And yeah, it's like it helps with a lot of refining and making sure that the agent understands like what I'm trying to get to, like my end goal, and to see if it's like going to be there along the way as I build it out.
So are you one-shotting the prompts for the plan that plan mode comes up with?
Yeah.
And you're expecting agents to go off and create it, or are you expecting an orchestrator agent and then sub-agents to create what was in your plan? Or are you copying and pasting and creating multiple parallel sessions to then do each step that's in the plan?
There's like two ways that I do it. One way is just like if it's like a pretty small feature that I'm pretty confident just going in and prompting something and sending like a link from Figma through MCP to be like, okay, hey, this is the thing that I want to add to this, I don't know, component. Can you implement it? And once it does that, it's like, cool, you did it. But like I said, it's with flows, it's a little bit more complex where I need the plan. But with plan, I try not to one shot it because I have this feeling that I might break if I try to make it go through all the steps. So I try to do it one by one and in new chats too, because sometimes when I work in a single chat for a little bit too long, I find that it doesn't really achieve what I wanted to. And opening a new chat kind of refreshes that. I'm curious to know like what has your optimal workflow been for using VS Code as a designer?
We recently introduced a redesign of agent sessions that allows you to run multiple chat sessions at a time. either local, background, or cloud. I will mainly use it like a background session
Yeah.
for the work trees that we have. So and like the local branch that I'm working in, typically on like a specific feature,
Yeah.
I want to test different variations. So I will have like the function and the foundation that I want to set with a local session within the branch that I'm working in. But then I'll go and create a few parallel background sessions in a separate work tree that has like variant A, variant B, and variant C. And then I'll go in and debug and see what those different variants look like.
Yeah.
And then depending on the one that I want, I'll go ahead and merge the changes in that work tree and apply that change to my local branch.
Okay.
So I can test like, should it be green? Should it be blue? Should it be red? Without having to affect my local branch all that much.
Does it mirror kind of like the iterative process, the brainstorming process for you, or is it a little different?
It does.
Yeah.
In the same way that I would go into Figma, for example, and change like a button color, I can just do that instantly with a few prompts.
Okay.
And I think it works a little bit better to actually do it within VS Code
Yeah.
because we have access to our entire repo, right? So we can see how this button change would permeate across other experiences within the product.
Yeah.
We can also see how it would work in different contexts.
Right.
We have a pretty tight design system that we use. So changing the color of a button, for example, will permeate throughout the entire product.
Yeah.
And that's not really something that you can really experience in Figma or like a Figma prototype. You can see how it works if you're using like components, for example. But there are also like a ton of edge cases that we don't necessarily think of when we're creating our prototypes.
Right. Yeah.
And by doing it in the actual product, I can see what those edge cases might be.
Yeah. I totally agree with you 100%. In Figma, it's really easy to get bogged down by the details. Like, oh, like we're in these canvases and they're still just pixels. They haven't really been coded yet, but we get so easily fixated on these small things that when we bring the same thing into like AI or like VS Code and we actually try building it out, we see it all from point A to point B, like every movement, every detail.
I'd imagine that a lot of the people watching this are really comfortable with Figma. They're really comfortable with sketching.
Yeah.
How do we maintain that part of our design process while still introducing AI-assisted coding?
I still use Figma. The only thing that you really see are just the first version of an idea. And I think that's still what's so great about Figma is that you're still able to set that building block there. You're still able to like plan out and kind of see before you touch code, like, okay, like this is kind of how I want it. This is like a general idea, but it's not going to be the end result. It's become more of like a sketching surface for me than it has been like a full can't let go out on a prototype. Like I stopped prototyping Figma because I think VS Code and the agents can just do everything for you. Like, and if you use things like if you use instructions or you use things like agent skills, which is pretty new, like you can get your screens like all the way to like 90%.
So are you still using like a design system?
Okay, so yes, I am. I yes, I'm still using a design system. I think it's good to be able to understand the nitty-gritty, like, okay, like how is this styled? How is our brand? Like how can I communicate that well when I design things? Like I think it's so good to be able to use it and be inspired by it. And I say inspire because I think with AI, it's been really clear that there's so many ways you can rethink an experience. And like when you see your components work together, it's like, okay, that's really interesting. But what if there's more to it? What if there's another way we can envision it so that it works beautifully? Like,
With working in Figma and like spending hours on a prototype, getting it just right, that kind of narrows us down into like one perfect
I
solution.
know, yeah.
And I feel like we always get upset when we hand it off to a developer and it's implemented and there's like 2 pixels that are wrong
I know.
or something's not using the correct component. Working in the actual product gives us that freedom and And it kind of empowers us to make those changes ourselves. Like,
Right.
let's start from the solution that we want to implement
Yeah.
and then work with the engineer to get it working in the way that we expect it to,
Yeah.
um, as opposed to spending so much time creating this picture and this image and spending so much time getting the process right. Kind of echoing some of the points that Jenny had made in her video. We as designers are very personal with our work,
Yeah.
and we speak very emotionally and we speak very empathetically. We're kind of talking about relatively abstract concepts at times.
Yeah.
We speak with our hands. We're very gestural. We're painting pictures in the air.
I know.
Whereas working with engineers, in my experience, it's a little bit more literal.
Mm.
How has your experience been working with the engineering team?
We are a mix of like function and aesthetics, and engineers are more like function. Does this work the way we expect it to? Does it get their job done?
Rightfully so.
Yeah, and if it gets the job done, that's a really good thing. Honestly, in a way, I think we can all learn from each other. And I think being able to kind of understand where engineers come from in the sense, like, does this get the job done, does help us in a way, like, not get too focused on those kind of like aesthetic details. Like, figure out, okay, does these meet the requirements that our engineers are asking for? And I think after it's all the stuff that we kind of want to put into it, like the aesthetics, like the taste, the feel, like that can be iterated on later. It goes hand in hand, and I try to see it more as like I'm trying to be as collaborative with you as possible, and we'll learn from each other. We'll adapt to our process and see like, okay, where can we understand where design is coming from, and understand engineers are coming from.
Mm-hmm. And in the understanding, I feel like we are more so encroaching on the engineering workflow a little bit more than engineers might be approaching of design workflow. Though I do think that some of our roles across like the Three in a Box team with product management, engineering, and design will collapse even more.
Yeah.
Have you had experiences where you felt like your lack of knowledge in the engineering workspace um, was a disadvantage?
I do agree with the fact that like, okay, like sometimes when I do use these tools, like I feel a little bit too scared that I'm like encroaching in a space where I don't really understand it fully. And that would mean that I need to consult someone and really double check and fact check my information. But I think of it less as a disadvantage for designers and more an advantage to improve what we already know. Like you said, when you were saying how engineers and product managers and designers like that's slowly collapsing, I see that happening at a quicker rate if we're able to adopt these tools. And I think more complex things I probably like we'd seek guidance on. And I think that's just part of that's natural. That's collaboration.
Are your engineers letting you into the repo?
Oh my gosh. So with Foundry, Microsoft Foundry, our product, we have a thing called Foundry that one of our UX engineers, James Bradford, worked on, and the UX engineer team. And it's essentially a replica of Microsoft Foundry. And that's essentially the designer's playground. In VS Code, we are allowed to break everything in there and design our own prototypes.
So,
So we're not necessarily into the repo yet.
okay, so help me understand the difference between Vibe Foundry and Microsoft Foundry as a product.
Yeah. So Microsoft Foundry is the actual customer facing platform.
Okay.
That is where all the like it's front end and all the complex back end. But Vibe Foundry is just the front end and the design system and the skin.
Okay.
Microsoft Foundry.
So how did the changes that you make to the skin of Vibe Foundry translate to a PR, for example, that an engineer would end up merging and then it's available for the public to see?
I think our ideal hope with because Vibe Foundry is still pretty new and we're still experimenting with its capabilities. Right now, we're hoping to use it as a tool to communicate how we're using the design system and experience and sending that code to an engineer to replicate exactly as it is in Vibe Foundry into Microsoft Foundry.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, it's mostly been like prototyping in the code base, and we foresee ourselves like sharing that code to engineers to recreate. But the way we kind of share it out is through demos, video demos.
So what I'm hearing from you is that you have a separate working area that's specific to design that is not connected to the engineering workflow per se.
Yeah.
On the VS Code team, I think we're in a really awesome spot as designers because we can just go clone the repo and then like make some changes and then submit a PR and then it'll be merged. If the engineer reviews it and they accept it, etc. That brings us very close to the product and very close to the engineering workflow.
Yeah.
There's very little distance between our ideas and what actually is available to the public.
Yeah.
How is that any better? This idea of a vibe or mini version or just the front end skin of your product, how is that any different from just working in Figma?
Being able to work in the actual repo is like the most ideal workflow a designer can get in. And I really hope that in the future we're actually able to achieve that kind of thing and be really in deep into that process. I think that will really change our roles a lot more. And I'm excited for that kind of future. I think with Vibe Foundry though, I would say that it's a little more than Figma. That's because it does actually embed our design system component code into Vibe Foundry and we're able to use it. The main fix with Vibe Foundry is that there's less bugs to point out and be like, you didn't design this exactly as I wanted. But if we have the Vibe Foundry, we're able to picture it exactly the way we want and just share that code folder to a developer and say, this is the front end, make it exactly like this. And all you need to do is attach the backend to it.
Let's talk about GenUI.
GenUI.
What is that?
So GenUI, there's this tool, this idea that Google released recently. It's called A2UI, and what it demonstrated as is, let's pretend we're in this chat experience and we know that there's an agent who's going to reply to us, and we ask for like, hey, like I want to see a graph of some data from my Excel sheet. And what the agent is going to do is it's going to generate the UI for that user's problem, that ask. That's essentially the user interface that that user will be interacting and manipulating with. And that's the whole idea of what GenUI is. It's something that these components, these screens that agents generate for a user's context, user's needs, problems, and it'll solve it. We'll give it to you.
So instead of needing to open Excel,
Yeah.
and then needing to open a specific file in Excel, and then scrolling to a specific line, this would instead just be one surface, one interface with a chat box, and you'd say, show me this spreadsheet and explain this line to me. So it's really putting like the onus on the user to describe what they need to see,
Yeah.
as opposed to the other way around, where what we're used to seeing is something kind of being served to you and you have to search for it.
Yeah. I know, right? But the thing is, and I had this side conversation with John Maeda about how this overlaps with the idea of like agent skills and instructions and like context engineering is evolving so quickly too. Like we're finding different ways to ask agents to give the right output. And the thing is like, yeah, we are asking the user to explain something a certain way for the agent, but the hope is that the agent will have so much background knowledge as to what an experience should look and feel like that even a simple sentence could get a really thorough end result for a user to use. We give them a skill and understand like, okay, like all the design principles, and like all the data from users, like research and how you're supposed to build proper front end code, like etc. All those things, all those layers end up becoming like adding on to that agent, and we expect that it'll create something like easy and harmonious for people.
Why is that better than having a dedicated piece of software, having to download an app versus write a sentence to describe this?
I think the idea that with and I'm like speaking very neutrally. The idea with Gen UI is that like we don't have to keep solving problems anymore, and the user can just say like, oh, like I feel like this kind of sucks, and the agent will fix it. In that sense, I guess it's like less effort from designers, less effort from engineers. Like it just becomes like this really full-fledged agent that just does everything for you instead of like a platform that like, designers and engineers, design engineers had to like meticulously go through and like apply research to and like fix iteratively when the agent could just do that over and over again.
Right, right. I think we're starting to see this now a little bit with like ChatGPT, for example, when you're connecting a tool or an external source to your chat. You can just say like, where is this building, or like what's the best restaurant near me, and then it'll just load the map,
Yeah.
as opposed to giving you an address that you then have to copy and paste into
Right.
Google Maps.
Yeah.
Something like that could really fit into like my daily workflow. But as a designer, if we're just relying on the agent or the model and the user's prompts to create the experience, where do we fit into that process?
One outcome could be like we become judges and evaluators and critics more than we become the people who do the work because the agents can do the work themselves. And that's a little bit more abstract.
Yeah. We've been having these conversations behind closed doors. Our designers are always asking us, like, how can we get on board?
Right.
So I'm really hoping that this can be an example for designers who are interested in introducing an AI-assisted workflow and getting closer to the developer experience. So thank you so much for being here and offering your expertise for the world.
Thank you.